Thank you so much for being here today. We're really excited to be here at the In Real Life conference. My name is Angelina Darrisaw, and I'm the founder and CEO of C-Suite Coach. You have a treat in store for you for the next 40 minutes because we have such a dynamic panel. If you've read their bios, and you know how fascinating each of the women sitting up here with me are today. So first, without further ado, I want to kick it off by having them share a little bit about themselves, your current title and role, and then as you share that, if you could, these are all leaders in their fields, if you all could just share a defining moment that prepared you and positioned you to lead. So we'll kick it off with Adina.
Okay, hi everyone. Going by alphabetical order, first names. My name's Adina Smith. I work at Revolt Media and TV. I am the SVP of Integrated Marketing, Brand, and PR. So I love my job. I think that's vital and important, and the reason why I really came from where I was, which was a small town in Illinois with very nice Midwestern meek parents, is I saw that they were so nice that they were being taken advantage of by everyone from a cashier to family members to employers, and I was raised that way too. I still am very nice, but I learned that you have to train people how to treat you. And that was a defining moment, is when I said to myself, without any training or teaching, that I'm not going to do that. And when I moved from Illinois to New York, which is a story in itself, but we'll save that for another time, I really learned that if you don't speak up for yourself, and if you don't speak up for yourself correctly, so start with honey, but I've got some vinegar back there, then you really will not get to the point where you want to be. So my defining moments were from people telling me no, people telling me rude things about myself, and then me flipping the script and making it better and bringing others with me.
Thank you so much. Dr. Brittany?
Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome back on the stage again. I'm glad to be back. Really, I guess for me, I kind of came to this field through entrepreneurial education. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs who literally moved to the country and had nothing. I saw how entrepreneurship could help bridge a lot of divides in terms of bringing generational wealth and opportunity, and parlay that into some research in school. So I ended up going for my doctorate in organizational leadership and adult learning, studied Black tech entrepreneurs and their experiences, because often we're not in the tech field, and that led me now to teaching entrepreneurial education and more so research through a nonprofit called Ethos, and we work with a couple colleges across the country, really just sharing education around financial literacy and skills related to workforce development and how the entrepreneurial mindset can tie to other areas of interest in whether it be the arts or other things, just as I saw it do for my family. And I think one of the defining moments for me was really whenever that light bulb moment occurs for a student. I think that is so profound and has always been like my go-to. Whenever I see a student's eyes glimmer like they've learned something new, has really stood out for me and kind of been the impetus that has kept me going in this field and really wanting to share that joy with more people.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Fran Pastore. I'm the founder and CEO of the Women's Business Development Council, based here in Stamford, Connecticut. Defining moment for me was really an old adage that is, necessity is the mother of invention. And when I was a young woman, I found myself unexpectedly a single parent with two small children, 2 and 4 years old. And I come from a very provincial cultural background where the logical thing to do was when I got divorced was to move back to Brooklyn and move into my parents' basement. But my upbringing was such that I watched my mother's sisters all be taken care of and be completely and totally dependent on my father. And that was not a life or a example that I wanted to set for my 2 young daughters. With most entrepreneurs, you have a passion around something, and if you're lucky enough, your passion aligns with a need that needs to be filled in your community, in your space. And at that moment in time, what I learned was that Connecticut was the only state in the country that did not have an entrepreneurial training organization for women. And so rather than move back into the basement, I choose to get completely out of my comfort zone, which, by the way, I so enjoyed the speakers before me about, getting out of your comfort zone. It was completely out of my comfort zone. It was out of my personal comfort zone, and certainly what I was raised to believe I should do, which was to stick with what was comfortable. And that is how the Women's Business Development Council was born, and how I became a leader in our community for women.
Wow. Thank you. I told you these women are dynamic and fascinating. And I also just want to share a quick defining moment for me. So I come from 4 generations of teenage moms. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, Bed-Stuy to be exact. And by the time I was 25, I found myself working in the media industry. I worked at ESPN and then Viacom, making 6 figures. I had been promoted 3 times in 4 years. I was managing a team and was a senior manager by that time. And I realized that every time I got promoted, there were less and less people in the room that looked like me. And I felt that if I could do this from a humble upbringing, an incarcerated parent, teenage mom, then there should be more people doing it. And I really tried to hone in on what was the difference, what made the difference for me. And I realized it really was having quality access to coaching and professional development. So in 2015, I founded my company, C-Suite Coach, to do exactly that, to prepare more diverse talent to lead and succeed. So essentially what we do at C-Suite Coach is we try to work with big employers to get them to pay for coaching for diverse talent, whether those are entrepreneurs. We work with a little company called Google to supply free coaching to diverse entrepreneurs in 9 now cities across the US, or if it's within a company internally working with their talent to help them prepare to succeed. So I'm really focused on women being successful, people of color being successful, both at work and in entrepreneurship. And that being said, what I think is so unique about this panel is that we have women who are doing it in both. So one of the questions I'd like to pose to you is, what are the different challenges for a woman growing in the corporate setting, going up the corporate ladder, versus a woman breaking out in entrepreneurship? What are the differences and challenges there? Would you like to take that?
Sure, I'll be happy to take it. I think immediately what comes to mind is in entrepreneurship, I think of more of this free form, zigzag of kind of that picture where it says you're here and you want to go here, but you see the thing is swirling. Anyone know that meme?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think of that, and then I think on the ladder side, it's supposed to be a straight ladder. However, it also kind of zigzags and moves in a similar form. I think through what I often see in the entrepreneurial realm, first and foremost, though, is that just kind of taking a leap in, as I think so many of us have been saying, and just starting somewhere with the knowledge that you have. It may not be as little as we like to think sometimes. Diving in and really, I was just having a conversation in the hallway about mentorship and the power of one of my friends. He's a videographer, and he actually is sitting here right now. And he was saying how he went on set and handed out his business card to someone on set, and now he's working on a series that's on Netflix. So it's you never know kind of where the connection is going to come from, whether it be in the corporate realm or in the entrepreneurial realm, but taking what knowledge you have and taking that first step. So those are some of the things I think of.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you have to ask. No one invited me. I certainly looked around the room and it was a bunch of men going to these meetings, and no one was asking me. They weren't asking my bosses, some of whom were women and some were men. So I said, I think I should go. I think the meeting that you're going to have, there are going to be women there, and you're going to walk in a bunch of men, and they are going to notice, even if you don't care. So I use objectivity and facts versus subjectivity, in my opinion, even though that was my opinion, to make them say yes for a business reason and create a win-win. So, half the time I got promotions or invited or hired the person I wanted to hire, even though they weren't perfect on paper, was because I asked someone, why not?
Wonderful. Anything to add there, Fran?
Yeah, I just to take off a little bit on what Dr. Brittany said, is that with the entrepreneurial path, you're really carving each step of the way on your own, whereas in the corporate sector, there's more of a prescribed path. But what's common between both of those things is that you need, and it's becoming more and more clear, and it's been talked about all morning, the need for mentors and sponsors and coaches, regardless. Whether you're forming that on your own, and creating your own board of directors that was spoken about earlier in one of the conversations, or you have the opportunity to get built-in leadership or built-in mentors through the leadership in your company, which, by the way, we all know that doesn't always naturally happen. You have to ask.
Awesome. And one of the things that also I think is unique about this group is you all have really different sets of expertise with different communities. Can you chat a little bit about some of the trends you're seeing in leadership from a millennial and Gen Z perspective?
Yes, it's very different, and I'm Gen X, so I remember when I started out, everyone's like, you must be angry, you're gonna fight with us. And I was like, no, it's so nice. I'm not yet quite the jaded New Yorker at that time, but this generation is the same as we all were, I feel. They have slightly different tendencies, Gen X and Gen Z. And what I find the biggest differences are would be there is a little more expectation of timely acceleration. So, typically I would never think of asking for a promotion within a year of employment, but that's something I can expect. Another thing is that I think we all have, but there's a great fearlessness that millennials have that Gen Z doesn't. Gen Z is a little more old-fashioned, and I want to make sure that this is analytically thought out. And millennials are very, I'm going to do this. We can make this happen. And let's do it now. So I like that.
I like that too.
I'm into that. I have no problem with that if it's done respectfully and correctly. And correctly is subjective, and I'm good with that. So I think that most of the millennials are very different in their timeliness expectations, and that's good for acceleration. You have to look at it in that way versus slow down, follow my lead, and then it's easy to work with them. Everyone on my team is a millennial. Everyone pretty much I work with is a millennial. So I'm the minority age and race where I work.
Are there any millennials in the room or Gen Zs? Okay, sweet. So then this is just quick
Let
follow-up.
me tell you how you guys are.
So then this is a great follow-up question for you, Adina. So since you are a Gen X and a largely millennial workforce, what have millennials and younger leaders done that have really successfully portrayed to you that they are ready to lead?
By doing it. If I give people any opportunity that can be given, I am not a hierarchical person. As long as you're not stepping on people's toes and you're doing things and updating people. If I know what you're doing, I'm good with it. I don't want to find out that it's been done and it's been done incorrectly and you didn't do X, Y, and Z that the client wanted. But if you come to me and say, I would like this project, I will say, tell me how you're going to do it. And you lead it and keep me updated, and I'll tell you if there's any adjusting, we can talk about it. Half the time I learn something. The other time, hopefully they're open to learning something. And that really, in my opinion, is the best way when you have experienced people and not experienced people to get the best result. So things are new. So I learn, so they learn. And again, a win-win.
So do it and also update and be really transparent about what you're doing when you're doing it.
And hopefully you don't have a micromanaging boss.
Yes. So just shifting gears a little bit and want to really leverage the expertise of the panel here. One of the things I really enjoyed reading about your bio, Fran, you talk about coming to Connecticut, but you are so much broader than Connecticut. Fran has done work with entrepreneurs in Costa Rica, in Rwanda, and all over the world. So can you just chat a little bit about some of the trends you're seeing of women in leadership internationally, and what can we apply here?
Well, you know, my lens is very gender specific.
Yes.
So I have worked with women and a lot of young women entrepreneurs. Most recently, I was in Ethiopia oh gosh, it seems like it was yesterday, but it's been 2 years ago. And, you know, what I'm seeing is that young women in some of these third world countries are no different than the young women entrepreneurs that we work with right here in the United States. Everybody really wants the same thing. They want a future that they can believe in, not to jump on what the mayor talked about earlier, but everyone is really looking to find a way that they could make impact. And in many ways, Angelina, a lot of these women have backgrounds similar to some of us in the room today, including your own story that you talked about. And they are looking for role models and leaders like you, and like many of you in the room today, that they can emulate so that they can take their dreams and their ideas to the next level. But what I'm seeing is that these young women are looking for mentors. They are looking for coaches. They are hungry and desperate for the kind of guidance and attention that I think you're going to be giving out in Rwanda in another month or so. And so what I've seen is that a lot of these countries are actually investing in women. And Rwanda is a really great example of that. Post-genocide, when 70% of the population are females, you have to invest in the population, in the gender that is going to take the country to the next level and make it what it is today. So a lot of investment is taking place, and a lot of young women see with social media what's happening in the United States and other westernized countries, and they want to be a part of it. So they're hungry for it, they're open for it, and one of my personal passions is to be there and be ready to give it to them if the opportunity presents itself. And in terms of a trend, I think the trend that I'm seeing is not dissimilar from what we're seeing here, but it's all in STEM and technology.
Oh, great transition. So speaking of STEM and technology, Dr. Brittany, can you talk about some of the challenges that you're seeing Black women facing in that field as they seek to lead?
Yeah, so there have been a few studies recently. One particularly, Project Diane, has spoken a lot about the 0.2% of Black women tech founders who've been funded. I think that number has been growing over the years, and I was actually also just talking to someone earlier about this, on how the conversation, you know, we're all working out in the field, but sometimes there hasn't been a consortium of data kind of showing some of the experiences founders have had, and would love to see how so often it's always about, you know, learning how to tell the story in a way that speaks the language to, say, someone in public policy, or someone in the academic educational space, or someone in, you know, some of these other spaces. So really eager and excited to see more studies like how Project Diane has made a profound impact in bridging those divides, and then also, too, looking at how some founders have really taken the initiative to mentor the next generation, including yourself, Angelina, and your work. So, I mean, another thing that has been a consistent theme has been kind of really wanting to give back. I think that so many of us enter this field not just for ourselves, but because we truly care about building wealth within our communities, building wealth for our families. And so looking at it from that lens, I think having that in the background, or in the forefront rather, has helped to be kind of that guiding force, or that sense of encouragement that has fueled so many entrepreneurs. Also through the research, I found that Black women founders, even some of them have talked about PTSD related to funding and fundraising, especially because women face, you know, these situations and scenarios where they have been known or said to not receive as much funding as others. So really starting to just have those conversations and be open and candid and forthright with one another, I think, has been truly how we've started to see some of these tables turn.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That PTSD is real. Now, the title of the panel is Women Who C-Suite, but I know that there are also a lot of men in the room. And for all of you leaders, I want for you to be thinking about how you can be better allies to women who are approaching the C-suite. So I'd love the thoughts and insights from any of you about how men can be better allies to women seeking to lead.
I would say, don't notice that we're women. That's usually, you know, I typically had a presentation at a very traditional client, and it was in Miami, and it was myself and a very junior, first job out of college, male counterpart. And I went down, I gave the strategy, explained the creative presentation, which was sold, by the way, they bought it. But my point was, after I said, and here's what we'd like to do, what do you think? The head of that brand said to me, if you were my wife, you would be at home making me lunch.
Oh my God.
And by the way, this isn't 1940. I remember, and I was in my 20s at the time, so it wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't that recent, but it wasn't that recent. So, but I remember saying, like thinking, gosh, and you know, the rage and thinking about all these great things I could have said that really would have, you know, and then, you know, luckily, I didn't know Michelle Obama back then, go high, but I did, thank God. In a millisecond, what I said was, well, you haven't tried my cooking, but what do you think of the campaign? And I kind of did my best to course correct. By the way, they also, when I asked questions, would turn to my male counterpart and answer to him. So I did not let it get to me. I didn't quite at that time know how to handle it, but I kept saying, oh, I'm right here, and made a joke of it. Long story short, I also got kicked out of the corporate cafeteria that afternoon because there were no women allowed, except for servers. But I was able to eat there. And in doing that throughout the day, we had a 2-day meeting, and I kept course correcting them and saying, no, I'm here to do this. Answer the question so I can help your brand. They finally conceded. There was, you know, I could tell you more, but you get the point. But I feel that if you just wouldn't think about me as any different, if I'm, you know, the person who will help you get to the goal, well, I'll be good. And that's how I treat everyone else. So, you know, I don't see someone as younger or older or male or biracial or black or whatever. It's, what are your qualities? How are you going to help me, help us get to point B? And it usually works.
I love what you mentioned, Adina, because I think it's so important. And so often I enter spaces and, you know, the first thing is, okay, you're a woman. The second thing is you're an African-American woman. And then the third thing is always, oh, wow, you look like you're still in high school. and I'm like, oh my gosh. I went to vote maybe 2 months ago for a special election we had in my community. And the first thing they said to me, I had on a book bag because I didn't want to hurt my shoulder because I had, like, you know, my laptop, it was kind of heavy, and you know you had to change the shoes because you don't want to be walking in the heels all the time, whatever. So I had all this stuff, and I had the book bag, and I walk in, and they're like, oh, hey, you're going to high school? Which high school are you going to after you vote? And I was like, I just graduated. From undergrad? I was like, no. and you know, you don't want to come off as, yes, I recently did my doctorate, but like, because at the end of the day, we want to relate to people on a more human level, and all that other stuff is just kind of like fluff at the end of the day when it comes to really being able to have these conversations and know what you're, you know, talking about in these fields. You don't necessarily have to have a degree to be able to talk about these things. But what I found was that, again, as you mentioned, Adina, sticking to the conversation around, like, really here's how we redirect and course correct, and here are the stats, and here is the larger conversation, and here's the problem we're trying to solve. I think being able to kind of frame that in the midst of everything and pull that conversation back around and going higher, as Michelle Obama says, is most important, especially when so often, as soon as you walk in the room, you're immediately sometimes labeled. So I think one thing my significant other always says is he's always like, how can I be a better ally to women and other people? And I think the one thing I always say is just create a space for us. Allow us to be who we are, our full, truest selves, and allow us to enter the room with whatever amazing qualities and attributes and whatever difficulties, because we all have them, and just be who we are and accept us and not look at us for anything but the information that we're trying to relay in the time frame, to allow us to further the conversations, because as we all know, diversity and inclusion all across the board changes things. It empowers people, it brings new ideas and creates this greater wealth of knowledge and wisdom sharing. So just create a space, I think, has been the most resounding thing.
Yeah, I think, we are 51% of the population, and Dr. Brittany said it best. We all know that corporate boards perform better, corporations perform better, startups perform better when there are diverse boards, when 51% of the population is included. That said, I don't think we could ever forget that we give birth to 100% of the population. And so what I always like to say to my male counterparts, and when I'm talking about allies and how to help women succeed in business, it's, again, to make space. But when there's an opportunity to pull up a seat at the table, pull it up. And if there is no room for that seat, make some room. I think we as leaders, male and female, have an obligation to help those that are coming up behind us. And not just when we're talking about the gender space, but when we're talking about inclusion. I think we've seen enough evidence in the last few years what can happen when you don't include everyone at the table, right? We can think about Uber not having women on their board and some of the incidents that we experienced in the last few years with that. We can look at, car crashes, and we can look at the fact that car crash dummies were always male dummies, and the women, and it was when we started seeing an increase in women dying in car crashes, and we couldn't figure out why the airbags weren't working. It's because they were only tested on male dummies. Until just a few years ago, the American Heart Association reports that all of the testing that was done to determine who gets heart attacks and when and how to treat them, it was only done on males. In fact, it was a member of Congress from New York, Westchester County, and Connecticut that helped pass a law to make that illegal, to change that paradigm. So the evidence is there, and now it's a matter of understanding and buying into the fact that we will all succeed and do better when we're all included at the table.
Thank you. I completely echo that. There is a need to pull up a seat. So that means when you're writing articles, if you are in a position where you can be broadcasting information about your friends' businesses or the work that they're doing, share that information. When you're planning panels, make sure that they're culturally diverse, ethnically diverse, gender diverse. All of that really matters. Now, we have time for just 2 more questions. You all will not be able to have an open Q&A here, but please take note of the Twitter accounts and feel free to tweet your questions to the panelists if you have any for after the panel. I'd like to ask you all, what are some of the universal traits for women who lead or habits that need to be built as they're trying to grow on their leadership journey, whether you're coming up in the C-suite or carving your own path as an entrepreneur? We can start with Fran, yes.
Okay. I think women have just an innate ability to want to build consensus, to want to hear different points of view, and to want to be inclusive. And I think that's just part of the gender dynamic that we are a part of. I think also it's really important to acknowledge that what we just said a few minutes ago, that when we have diversity of thought. And when a woman is in a position of leadership, to really have that conversation and have that open communication and that dialogue. Because when you have different points of view, you're able to make better decisions as a leader. That said, there's just a level of inclusivity and a natural ability that we possess to want to engage different points of view and perspectives. And I think that's what ultimately gives us an edge. And it's something that I'm really proud of and that I try to do on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I always think about is recently in addition to Ethos and our work there, we also do a lot on the ground, and then just being able to parlay that into some writing. I've been writing recently a bit for Forbes, and through the writing and through speaking, I've been speaking with so many women entrepreneurs. I just had a meeting a couple weeks ago with Mahisha Dellinger, the founder of Curls, who has an Oprah Winfrey Network TV show. I also met with Priscilla Chan Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg's wife, a few weeks back, and then also recently spoke to H&M's head of diversity and inclusion. She, amazing woman, Adina. And really through all of those conversations with the women, one of the undergirding themes that all of them expressed was really just knowing their truth and what they brought to the table, not really selling themselves short. Even if the space wasn't really created for them, being able to stand by their morals and beliefs, because they knew that was the guiding compass at the end of the day. So they knew no matter what they were doing, they entered the space with intention. And I think the word intention is so important, because every moment of our lives and every moment of each day, what is the intent of me being in this space? What is the intent of me contributing to this space? What is the intent of my interaction with my friends, with my colleagues? What is the intent? And I think once we stay close and true to that intent, we're better able to navigate some of these spaces. I think sometimes we can get caught in the weeds and not necessarily look above at the beautiful sky that exists. And I think so often, like when we travel or go have different conversations, I always sit on the plane and I look down below and I'm always like, wow, everything looks so small. Like we're really small, compared to this vast world that we live in. So just, again, creating that space, following their intent was important, and I think a guiding compass.
I think in the corporate world, it's a little different. I've had both horrible and wonderful experiences with male and female. Oftentimes, that making space is met with a little bit of insecurity, and so there is a problem with bringing up other women. They feel that there can only be one, I suppose. So I think that what you have to do, what I've done to kind of nicely force my way in, is to support my boss, give them the credit where they have it, and also make myself indispensable, so I need to be in the room. That is a tricky topic. Sometimes it has not worked for me, but most of the time it has. And I think Angela Bundrent-Turner, who is one of my colleagues at Revolt, and I have to mention her because I always was very good at bringing people and linking arms. And Marie, I think you said whenever I see someone in the room, if it's a black person in a white room or a man and a female, whatever the anomaly is, I try and make that person feel unremarkable. In a remarkable manner. So what I think the best way to kind of get in there is to know that your light does not shine any dimmer by shining it on someone else. It actually, you shine brighter together. So try it, because sometimes it's not innate. It's honestly, I myself have thought, I don't want to lose this job. I don't want them to be better than I. And then I, shut up. Don't do that. Don't say that. Of course, there is room. There's always room. See, Brittany just said how small it is out there. There's tons of room. So you can bring people in, no matter who they are, no matter what level, race, age, gender, list the list. Inclusivity is really the only option.
Thank you. And I think one other thought to add there is no surprise coming from a coach, but I would say remain coachable in your path to leadership.
Yes.
Yeah. Really be receptive to feedback, seek feedback, don't run from it, and always be thinking about how you can develop the skill set needed to take you to the next level. Now, there's some that you have to filter out, but get good at knowing yourself and recognizing who are the people you trust to really guide you in your journey so that you're seeking the feedback needed to grow and develop yourself. Now, the final question I have, which I think is really important, especially, we have mothers at the table. I heard some of you talk about your significant others and personal relationships, and all of those things really impact us on our path to leadership. And we also have to think about how do we find ways to care for ourselves and the relationships in our lives when we're leading. So I'd love each of you to just share something that you do for yourself that helps put that life back into you when everything else in the world is keeping you stressed, or maybe it's something happening professionally. What do you do for yourself?
Well, I have found later in life, I've always been athletic and fit, but sometimes I don't. I focus on my career. I haven't eaten well. So very long story short, if you have ever seen a parent or relative or yourself go through a health scare or see what poor health does outside of, the 20s, you can eat and do pretty much whatever you want. But as a graduate of my 20s, I think that you really need to eat well and do whatever type of exercise, whether it's running or yoga or meditation or all of the above. You definitely need to say, I can do my job and be a mother and do all of this, but whatever your self-care is, you have to do it to really be, I found for me, to be at peace. Mm-hmm. I do it in the morning. I wake up extra early. And I also discovered you can work out at home now. You don't have to crimp and go to the gym. Who cares? I don't want to do it. But so that saves time. I feel that you really need to, because when your health comes into question, nothing else matters.
Yes.
You can't do anything else.
No, no fun.
Yeah, I think for myself as well, and it's so interesting, I think self-care also comes in the form of really communing with one another too, especially as women. I think that so many women we've heard more recent years talk about their issues with infertility, from Michelle Obama to Gabrielle Union to other women in various fields. I think having a lot of those uncomfortable conversations, I think, is truly important. And I think health is primary. So, I'm a huge advocate for, if you feel like you're having mental fog, if you feel like you can't go any further, yes, we want to push and be, on top of things and really do well. However, breaks are important. I often find myself being like, oh my gosh, no, I shouldn't stop. But then I'm like, no, you really need to stop. Close the laptop, set the phone aside, walk outside for a couple minutes. I love to go for morning jogs when it's warm, because we have this nice park near my house. And then outside of that, really just, I listen to a lot of books and a lot of podcasts. I'm always listening to books. One of my favorite ones is You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. How many people know? Yeah. That book, I literally was playing it in the car on the way here, and she created one you are a badass at making money, you are a badass at this and that. And not for a conceit kind of a way, but just in a way of trying to fill yourself with those positive affirmations. I think so often, especially being someone who tries to be as open to feedback as possible, it could be a lot sometimes, it could be a lot, because you want to call to question certain things that you're doing, but at the same time, you do want to present a level of confidence, because especially as a woman or in these spaces, you want to present a level of confidence. So negotiating all that, having those positive affirmations helps. Having the support network of women talking about these, topics that are often not discussed helps. And then also meditation. I also dance. I went to high school for dance. And the family-owned business that I was talking about is a martial arts studio. So I used to teach kids in after school to come in, meditate, and think about what they wanted to do before starting the martial arts practice and their homework for the day. So I think that, you got to practice what you preach. And so it's been great to just incorporate those self-care tips.
Thanks. So I love to swim, and I try to do that as often as I can. But my real self-care is spending as much time as I can with my German Shepherd, who's 2 years old, and he's my therapy dog, and he comes to work every day with me. And we walk every day, several miles, right here in Stamford. And I have just found that connection with this other living thing that just gives you, unrequiting love at every minute of every day, and just wants to be there to find out how he can make you feel better. And the beautiful thing about that is I get to share him with my entire team. And the feeling that everyone has with him in the office is just so amazing. People come into my office just to sit there for a little while and be with him and pet him because they get so much tranquility from that. It's almost meditative for some of my team. The other thing that's become really important to me that I really lost sight of for a long, long time running this organization is time with your tribe. Your girlfriends, your boyfriends, your coaches, your mentors, just making the space in your week, even if it's every other week, to see friends get together and do something and not just having dinner. Maybe it's taking a walk or having some kind of experience together that is not just necessarily around healthy eating. So making time for relaxation, but with other people, because I found that being in this role is sometimes really isolating, and you really don't have a lot of people that you can talk to. So getting back to the basic things of just having that interpersonal human relationships that has nothing to do with work is so important.
Thank you. I wanted to echo that. They say some of the best ideas are discovered while you're out and about, or speaking, bouncing ideas around with colleagues too, so that's a great place.
Yes,
Yeah.
and oftentimes serendipity happens when you're having those meetings. That happened yesterday, actually. I was meeting two friends for coffee in the middle of the day, and in the same cafe, we met Katrina Adams, who is the CEO of the USTA. And it was an amazing opportunity, and right there, the five of us just came up with all these things that we can do together to help women in the community. So yeah, things like that do happen.
Wow.
Great stuff.
I echo all of these tips for self-care. I, too, have a therapy dog, Chocolate Lab, named Rock, and I take him with me everywhere, including on planes. Don't hate. So anyway, the only other
I want
thing...
to find out how you do that.
The only other thing that I would add to that, for me, what's helped my self-care is being unapologetically selfish. And I say that because one of the things that probably comes from how I've been socialized as a woman is I'm a people pleaser, and I've been for most of my life. And there was a turning point where I recognized that I really had to focus on pleasing myself. So I say no to things I actually don't want to do, so I don't position myself to feel guilty about it later or angry with myself because I've said yes to commitments that don't matter to me. So think about how you can prioritize yourself and be selfish. We have to close, but I just want to call out a few points from each of our panelists that I want to leave you with to remember when we think about women in the C-suite. Adina mentioned it's important to speak up for yourself and use that combination of honey and vinegar, and also really be entering spaces with intention from Brittany. And then Fran just talked about necessity being a mother of invention, and also for anyone in the room that has access to opportunity, if you have access to it, pull up a seat for others, and if there's not a seat available, make room for others, especially women. So I want to thank you all so much for the gems that you dropped, and look forward to seeing you all later in the vendor center.